That's just a quick story on that front. Yesterday, the kids they come running in the house. They're like, I need a baggie and some Post-it notes and some hangers. I'm like,
And you're like, why?
why? And they're like, because these ladies asked us if we collect some things for a scavenger hunt. I'm like, what ladies? They're like, ended up finding out that it was just like a neighborly, somebody down the road that we've never met, but they were having like a Labor Day party and getting all the neighborhood kids to do stuff.
Did they at least win the...
No, they didn't participate.
Oh, well.
I told them maybe next time.
Now the terrorists won. I just want you to know.
This is Epic Battle Cry Skirmish 195! Robbed and jacked!
Hello and welcome to Epic Battle Cry. This is the place where we cut through the crap to bring you the real deal. Sorry. Yeah, as much as I didn't like the Falcon Cry, I feel like it still kind of was better than what we've come up with
Maybe
so
we
far.
need to bring it back. Maybe by comparison, this is actually a very valid sales technique. By comparison, the Falcon Cry could have been the better way to go.
Well, that is true. I'm your host, Tony Grice, and with me, as always, is Daniel Kaiser and Brent Adams. Daniel, how you doing this week, man?
I'm doing good, TG in 3D. I do not work for the White House or, contrary to popular opinion, Microsoft, so I've had a great week. My last week has been, by comparison to those two entities, rather startlingly good and non-eventful, because I've just kind of been tracking all the news and hanging out, and there you go. So I can't believe E3's coming up either. So that's
crazy. You know what those two things have in common is that all the difficulties they're having right now are completely of their own doing.
Of their own accord. Yep.
That's the other thing.
Well, good. It's good to hear from you, man. Brent, how you doing this week?
What's up? My retailers of restriction! My panderers of pain! How art thou?
Valid.
finally relevant.
That's right. And I'm back to 100%. As opposed to last week, where I almost killed myself. That's right.
It's like, it's like just
been gargling with anything lately, or
you can't remember his name.
It just never ends.
All right. Well, we got plenty to go through this week, so let's go ahead and run through the gauntlet. All right, guys, we're here in the gauntlet, and the first bit of news up this week is a bit of a curiosity. It's the winner and what the winner got for the game Curiosity. DK, you want to tell us what this game brought us?
After long last, we finally know what's inside the cube. Not a whole lot. But the bottom line is that Peter Molyneux's and 22 Cans, the studio that brought us the experiment of a video game known as Curiosity that we've mentioned several times on this show since it was last revealed during E3 last year and then launched officially last fall. I believe it was in November. The cube has been cracked by a UK-based player that by the name of Brian Henderson, who after about 900,000 active users, using this thing, the app where you just basically tap your phone and chip away at the cube, an average of 259 cubelets per day by a player were dissolved in an attempt to reach that fruity center. It has been reached, and what we know inside is, in fact, the ability to be the god in the upcoming 22 Cans game Goddess, which is a Kickstarter project that they're working on. So basically, you've worked your ass off, and now you get more work for it. So that is what is, it's very vague at this point in terms of exactly what Mr. Brian Henderson is going to be assigned to do, but he's going to dictate a lot of things about the game world and its rules and all this type of stuff as he plays God in Goddess. But, Molyneux had said in the ramp up to the reveal that this would be a life-changing find. And while that doesn't sound very life-changing, that component is kind of delegated to the fact that Mr. Henderson, as the winner, is going to reap the rewards of the profits of the game. So every copy of the game that is sold, he will get a percentage of that. Of Goddess, yes.
Yeah, just to be clear.
Yeah, which it would have been better if they said, well, I don't even know what they made, but after they spammed people to kind of buy more bricks and make, the ultimate spam DLC. But anyway, so that's the reward. If that game sells well, he'll be tied to it financially. They did not disclose the percentages or details. I think they're actually still ironing all that out. But in a nutshell, now that we've kind of reached the end of this game and experiment, what do you guys think about it on the whole in terms of interaction and what it revealed about us as curious people?
I think the main takeaway here is the fact that what was at the center of the cube was a publicity stunt for another game, because that's all this fucking thing is.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is any grand intellectual exercise at play here. I think that this was clever marketing and absolutely nothing else. As for the role that Brian Henderson is going to play in Goddess, if Goddess turns out to be as thought-provoking and popular as Curiosity, this poor bastard stands to make 75 cents.
I think it's interesting because originally this was going to be a life-changing event because it was the game was going to be Goddess. And Brian was going to actually have to have a sex change.
That's right.
To fulfill the role.
And Peter Molyneux's telling him, it's like, oh, it's not that bad, really.
No, he said, oh, it's not that bad. No, you didn't say it right.
That's true.
So, all right, is there any? Before we move on, is there anything valid about this thing?
No.
Is there anything?
No.
Nothing.
No.
Okay, that's fine. I mean,
it exists, and it's valid in the fact that it does exist in the world today. But I mean, it's not like it has no importance.
Yeah, but I mean, like that valid is like a qualitative thing. I mean, like hydrogen exists. Is that valid? Yeah. I mean, it just is.
It's true. It just is.
In an effort to gauge people's curiosity, if you look at the numbers, I mean, it actually was kind of successful. Even though but
here's the real test. If he were to do this again, would it have the same kind
right.
of
Fool me once?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But what if the reward was like $1 million? That would be different, right?
Absolutely, and that's really what I sort of was. I mean, you kind of hope that that's what it's going to be, or some. Yeah. I don't know.
No, because Molyneux specifically said that, like, he didn't want it to be a big pile of cash because, like all people who have lots of money, he thinks money has no value.
It's very true.
Very curious.
All right, well, so we have a new announcement of a new game coming out for all platforms, Xbox One, PS4, and so forth, called Dying Light. Brent, what do we know about this game? Dying
Light is a new title that, as you said, coming to all platforms, both current and next gen, as well as PC. This is interesting. This is under development from Techland, the team behind Dead Island, or the studio behind Dead Island. This is going to be available in 2014. As the title might have already clued you in, this is going to have something to do with zombies, but here's the setup. It is an open-world, first-person action survival horror game that has, at the center of its play mechanic, this day-night cycle. And so I'm going to quote a little bit from the article here. During the day, players will traverse an expansive urban environment overrun by a vicious outbreak, scavenging the world for supplies and crafting weapons to defend against the growing infected population. At night, the hunter becomes the hunted as the infected become aggressive and more dangerous. Most frightening are the predators, which only appear after sundown. Players must use everything in their power to survive until the morning's first light.
Sounds like Los Angeles.
Yeah, right. But actually, I tell you, what it really reminds me of is I Am Legend, the novel, not the terrible movie. I find the whole day-night routine rather interesting, and that could definitely work its way into to some interesting gameplay. This also sounds a little bit to me. I mean, just with the whole emphasis on scavenging and everything, this sounds a little bit like, frankly, like something that might have been somewhat inspired by DayZ. Like this could be kind of like an interesting single-player kind of take on that style of gameplay. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Dead Island. I really didn't get into it all that much. But I have to say that at least the premise and the setup for this game sounds somewhat interesting to me. What do you guys think?
I think probably one of the more interesting tidbits that wasn't explored a lot in the initial announcement was the fact that it's going to have like this free running mechanic, kind of like a Mirror's Edge type of,
a parkour thing.
Yeah, parkour, traversing the environments, which if developed right could be pretty cool. I'm not a huge zombie guy. Like I don't just gravitate towards a game just because it's zombies, although I'm also not completely, I don't write off games just because they have zombies in them. It's something that's neither here nor there for me. But with something like this, that parkour element and the day-night cycles might make for some interesting things. Techland's obviously had a pretty good amount of success with Dead Island. Although to my knowledge, those games have their fair share of quirks at their core. They're pretty good at delivering the experience that you would expect. So, seeing this, the initial screenshots looked like they were pretty good running on, high-end PC hardware, most likely. So, I don't know. It seems like it'd be one to watch. If you're a zombie fanatic, this is definitely one to watch. But overall, I think whether or not you're a zombie fan like I am, then maybe you're not. You might be interested. No, there's no pun here. In just
Sure.
I could come up with one, but in whether or not the game survives on its own gameplay merits, I think that I might have a chance to do that. So I'll check it out. Wait to see more.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. It doesn't. It's one of those weird things. Like, it doesn't really seem like they're breaking any just incredibly new ground here. But at the same time, it kind of seems like they might have picked the best pieces of a lot of the types of games in there and kind of pulled them all together. So I don't know. Actually, I do think the game. I think it looks really good. I kind of like the concept. I don't know what it is. I really liked. I really like games that really kind of hold to a timeline, like hold to like a. Time is counting down, not just you play it until you're done. I don't know. I kind of dig the concept here. So I think there is some possibility there. Although I do wonder if the zombie sort of genre is losing any steam whatsoever. I mean, maybe not, arguably not by a lot of the things that are still out there. But I mean, you got. Once the mainstream, like, you got World War Z movies coming out and, The Walking Dead, is so popular, I kind of feel like there's like a peak and then maybe it starts to fall off a little bit, but who knows?
The zombie threshold has been reached.
Yeah, exactly. I think there has been a threshold reached for the next series that we're going to be talking about, which is The Need for Speed is getting yet another sequel, and it's going to be out on all consoles. DK, what new is coming to the table with Need for Speed Rivals?
Right. Need for Speed Rivals is the name of the all-new adrenaline-filled offering that is meant to provide
this one's adrenaline-filled.
Intensity of the streets, ultimate rivalry between cops and racers in an open road environment that they call Stunning. It's being developed by EA's new studio, Ghost Games, but we'll have some contributions from the veteran studio Criterion as well. And like you mentioned, it's coming to Xbox 360, PS3, PC, along with Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So, initially we got to see a little bit of a trailer. What we do know about this game is, that it's gonna include the auto log thing that's made Need for Speed so popular and the other racing titles in the past. It's gonna have, advanced customization options as well as, the pursuit and evasion tech. Nothing in the press release sounds like it's innovative or next gen. It sounds like it's all...
sounds like it didn't come from the last 5 versions of the game. Honestly,
sure, exactly.
Really.
It doesn't.
Yeah, and I really take issue with this whole thing referring to like stunning graphics, because in my opinion, I think they might be jaw dropping, but stunning might be going too far.
Sure. Well, this is going to be one of those games that comes down to what it looks like, really. I mean, because we're in that transition stage, and we know that it's a multi-gen kind of title. It'll be interesting to see how much better, the one on the PS4 and Xbox One looks. But in a nutshell, if you're a Need for Speed fan, this looks like something that you'd be interested in, but it certainly doesn't seem like it has anything that's going to be like, oh my gosh, okay, now they're totally flipping the script on racing games. But there's a lot of racing games coming out for the next gen consoles, so it's also going to be one of the more competitive genres as in this first little launch window. What do you guys think?
I think that I have run out of all of my ability to pretend like I care about Need for Speed, and so I'm just going to say that I don't care about Need for Speed.
Maybe we shouldn't put in the gauntlet.
No.
I try to be magnanimous about this and like say, hey, if you're really into Need for Speed, this is great for you. But it's just every couple of years, like I come back to Need for Speed to see if like they're doing anything different or interesting, and I always end up like renting one of their games and playing. I was like, nope, still Need for Speed, still don't care. This is just not my racing game. I'm into racing games, but I'm just not into this particular
like
style of racing games.
More simulation style. Yeah, and here's the thing. Like I kind of make joke at the front. I actually think the Need for Speed franchise is quite fun. I do sort of feel like it's one of those that we get a yearly update from that we don't need a yearly update from. I do actually feel like this is one of those where it is a game that's going to be out in the launch window of 2 new consoles that I actually kind of think there's a decent chance I would probably pick up, just because I want to sort of see, okay, I don't want anybody to try to break the mold in the game. I'd rather them just focus on maybe taking advantage of some of the new features of the hardware and things like that. So how much better can the game look on the new consoles and things like that. So I do sort of enjoy. I probably lean a little more towards the arcade racing style, although I do appreciate the simulation style games as well. But it's one of those, almost embarrassed to say, I probably would pick up, at least for the next-gen consoles. I don't think, like, if for some reason I didn't get the 1 or the 4, tell me which one is going backwards there. I would get the. I would definitely get one. It really does. When you said a second ago, you said the Xbox One or the PS4. I'm like, man, that just really does not sound good. But anyway, I do think it is something that actually would maybe be worth picking up. And in that launch window, when, let's be honest, there's probably going to be a little bit of a dearth of games for a little while. Like right at the beginning, you'll have a few, but then I think it'll be I don't know. This is
like
probably
any
something they'll get
launch,
some.
sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, so one more game that a ton of people have been looking forward to is getting a special edition. GTA 5 is getting some special stuff. Brent, what's with this collector's edition?
Yes, Rockstar has unveiled a special edition and a collector's edition for Grand Theft Auto 5, and we're going to run down
the collector's edition right not now. Special?
No, it's not very special.
Can you not collect a special edition?
Well, I mean, technically you can, but I mean, it's just again, it's the difference between jaw-dropping and stunning, right?
It's very true. Very true.
So anyway, the special edition is going to cost you $79.99 US, and it will include a copy of the game, a collectible steel book with exclusive artwork, a blueprint map, a special ability boost for Franklin, Michael, and Trevor within the game. Okay. Stunt plane trials content, which unlocks single-player stunt plane trials for additional aerial challenges in the game. Then you get bonus outfits, character-specific tattoos available at the tattoo parlors in Los Santos, and you get some additional weapons available when you visit an ammunition store. So that is the special edition. Right. The collector's edition is going to cost you $150. Whoa. That includes everything that you got in the special edition, along with a Grand Theft Auto 5 branded security deposit bag, and you also get a cap, a snapback cap. You get custom characters from previous Grand Theft Auto games to use in the Grand Theft Online character creation system. And you get you start the game, you have a garage to store custom vehicles, and you get a couple of vehicles to start off with, including a 1930 style hot knife hot rod, and then a Carbon RS sports bike. Mm-hmm. And then there's also the Chameleon electric car. If you pre-order the game, no matter what edition you get, regular, special, or collector's edition, if you pre-order the game, you get the ability to pilot the atomic blimp in-game, which I think we can all agree is by far the real prize in all of this. I mean, it's really the warhorse of the Grand Theft Auto 5 experience. I think we can all agree. So, I think that we all kind of know that I'm pretty cynical about special editions and collector's editions at this point. I don't really go for them. And as much as I want Grand Theft Auto 5, and I want Grand Theft Auto 5 a lot, I have to say that even I am looking at this and just going like, meh, not really sure it's for me. What about you guys? Do you think that there's anything of real value here?
We talked about the Total War Rome 2 Collector's Edition.
Yeah, that was really cool.
That was awesome, and I think the reason why it was awesome because it had so much physical content. I'm almost taken back by how much of this is all digital stuff that is you get the
So
map.
that doesn't cost anything to produce.
That's exactly
well,
right.
I mean, it costs something to produce in terms of the time
really.
that it takes to produce it. Not really exactly, but it's like after that's done, then it's all just pure profit. And not only that, but like that's something we've spoken about for years on this show, the disturbing trend of giving away things in the game or paying for items like that. Like, as an old school type of gamer, there's that reward for unlocking or experiencing, hey, if you do this at a certain time of day and talk to this one guy, then you could get into the blimp. Well, now I could just buy it and be done with it, or pre-order the game, or so this has got a lot of that stuff. So for me, I think that they maybe could have done some more cool physical stuff. You got the hat, you got the map. The map is cool. The GTA games typically with the map. I think what they could have done though, like this is GTA and Rockstar. One thing you didn't mention was that deposit bag comes with a key. I think it would have been really cool to know that like a couple of sets of the key will like unlock a car or something like that. You actually can win a car. Like that'd be awesome. Cool. I mean, they're charging $150 for the collector's edition. Give away a damn Dodge Dart or something.
I mean, yeah, it's not like a Dodge Dart's worth more than $150. Come on.
Well, I mean, come on. How much money are they going to make off this game? They could give away a car, but
at least one.
I mean, they could probably make a deal with someone that would give them the car to give away. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. It's to have your car or your brand tied to the launch of Grand Theft Auto 5 would be pretty big.
Well, and the thing with like the Total War Shogun thing was that like that collector's edition, or Total War Rome 2. The thing with that is that it was so intrinsically tied to kind of the spirit of the game and everything. And I mean, admittedly, it's not like Grand Theft Auto can include like a pound of C4 and a detonator, but I do kind of think that they could have gotten a little bit more creative with some of this stuff.
Yeah, for $150, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just they went that kind of, I think what Dana was sort of leading to, just the easy way, which is, digital content. Admittedly, it takes like a little extra time to program, but in really most cases, it's not even extra programming. It's probably stuff that they already created, and they just flip a switch, whether it's, okay, this is available with the main game, or this is available if you have some kind of pre-order. So I don't know. I definitely don't get into this, and I think this is actually one of those things that I feel like leans toward giving DLC the bad name that I think most people have for it, versus something like the cool collector's edition stuff that you get with that, which makes people think, hey, that is worth buying the special collector's edition of Total Rome to get that. So I don't know. I think this is almost it's a trend that's not going anywhere by any means, and I get that, but I almost wonder if it doesn't get to a point where people do have such a sort of, you know what, I just don't care anymore, and to a point where maybe they either stop doing them, or at least stop doing to the extent they do, or they genuinely start doing something that makes it, that makes a difference. That's actually something that is very cool or very different in game. I think we're probably a few years away from that happening, but I mean, I kind of think that it is getting to that point where people are just sort of like fed up with it, I guess.
It'll be interesting to see if any of the things that we're talking about right now, with these special editions, portends the DLC that we eventually do see for Grand Theft Auto 5, because traditionally I think that Rockstar's done DLC rather well. I think that they've handled DLC in the best way possible, with respect to like the expansions for Grand Theft Auto 4. So it'll be kind of interesting to see if they retain that strategy going into Grand Theft Auto 5, or if they end up doing something different, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, well, the special edition, I should note, is only like probably $10, well, $20 more, I guess, than the regular edition. So that's probably where you get the most value, is out of the special edition. But I don't know, some people might feel robbed by this. We'll see what happens. Or jacked.
I feel jacked. Does that count?
I don't know. What have you been doing? All right, guys. Well, we are here in the main topic this week, and
the one main topic,
and as sort of a bit of a follow-up to last week's Xbox One announcement conversation that we had. This past week has been a treasure trove of confusion and
a veritable cornucopia of
cornucopia of misinformation and misleading and back and forth, and people not knowing what they're sure about one day, and then It's been crazy. So we want to talk a little bit about some of the rumors and some of the reports and things like that are going on around a lot of the details leading up to the Xbox One specifically's launch. DK, you want to kind of start us off here? What are some of the reports and some of the rumors that have been going around that have people kind of up in arms, at least in terms of kind of the confusion level?
Well, lots of confusion. And like you said, last week we had our conversation, and for people who missed it, basically we got together immediately following the press conference to talk about Microsoft's presentation and reveal of the Xbox One. We know they showed the hardware. We knew going into that they were going to focus on the entertainment side of the device and what they want to do in the next generation. But, most of our conversation was spent debating whether or not they should have shown more games or whatnot, because there was very little actually revealed about the console and how it would function specifically in terms of gaming during the press conference. So, obviously, I was talking about in last week's show about the entertainment side, which is what they said they were going to talk about. We debated that. And, a lot of that stuff still remains to be seen, how it actually functions and, who it's of value to. A lot of people outside of the U.S. are obviously not engaged in any of that type of content, NFL partnerships and whatnot. I still maintain that, those are good add-ons to a lot of the entertainment side, which is what they showed. But their big gamble was that they could show that entertainment side and let the gamers wait. Well, gamers did not wait. They pressed for questions, and what they got was like you said, a lot of confused remarks by Microsoft executives dealing with everything from how the system will handle used game sales to the always-on connection, talking about Microsoft's support of indie games, and obviously the Kinect always being on, backwards compatibility, lots and lots of things. So I think the easiest thing to do right now is to kind of go down what we know, or at least what's been said.
Okay, we're done. All right,
what we don't know. Microsoft's biggest gamble in this past week is that they're basically just doing damage control, and they're waiting for E3 to continue to inform gamers, although they keep this kind of backhanded promise of it'll be okay. Look, we're gonna initially there's no support for indie games. Then it's like, how can we not support indie games? Of course we'll support indie games. And then it's not always online. Well, it's online when because it's got to check. It's got to check in with our system and this, that, and the other thing. And then there's used games, and the word on the street is used games are basically going to be tied to Microsoft, so that when you go to trade something in, that there's a service that has to kind of regulate that, so that they're getting a kickback and the developers are getting a kickback, which I think is not bad. If you're going to give your money to anyone, it's probably best, but they need to be upfront and honest. There's too many fucking questions out there this week, and they're doing a horrible job of answering them and making gamers feel good. All the things, the backwards compatibility, the constant connection, the constant use of Kinect, all these things are piling on. Maybe take one of these out and say, well, this is in there because of this, but they're just piling on, and Microsoft is just sitting by watching the ship sink. What do you guys think about these individual reports, and which ones stand out to you as probably being the most damaging, and what do you think that they'll do to address that at E3?
Can I just ask just one question just real quick, though? I do kind of want to just start off with a little bit of a different take. You're saying that, Microsoft has kind of said, just wait until E3. Well, the problem is they really haven't said that. They've sort of gone with, we'll kind of answer piecemeal as we've gone, and that's where the confusion is bound. I think we would be a lot better off if Microsoft had just said, hey, look, don't worry, we're not announcing any more details until E3. I think that would make people feel, frankly, better at least than they have this week, which is to get the back and forth on all these things. So Brent, I know you kind of wanted to jump in here. How do you feel about some of these issues?
Well, I think that one of the takeaways from this is that Microsoft's strategy of having a press conference 2 weeks before E3 and choosing not to address gaming in relation to their ostensibly gaming console was a terrible idea. I think that the strategy going into this Xbox One press event it was absolutely the worst thing that they could have done. The idea that they're going to talk about, one of the best-selling game consoles in the world, and not talk about games, and then have this, and then sort of just. I think that they honestly thought that the game industry and gamers will just take a 2-week hiatus and wait for E3 before they start asking all these questions. They are out of their goddamn minds if they honestly thought that was what was going to happen. So, I chiefly above everything else that we're going to talk about in this conversation, I think that the main thing to remember is that they fucked up in a big, big way, and that they didn't have to. They could have handled this. They could have handled this better. So that's
and I
number
agree.
one.
You know, last week I was saying, because I knew, because they said they were going to talk about the entertainment side of the device, and like I said on last week's show, they were trying to get. It was so funny because the next morning, I get on a plane, grab the USA Today, and boom, there's the Xbox One, and it's
just like you
proving
said.
my point. Exactly what I said. That's what they wanted. They didn't, but they neglected gamers too much. They did not include the necessary information or do what Tony's saying, which is like all of your questions about gaming will be answered at E3. They've hinted at that. They've said that this was the meaning about the entertainment side. E3 is about the games. Well, boy, they better fucking deliver when it comes to E3, because right now that ship is sinking hard and everyone is jumping on board Sony's ship.
The thing about that, though, is that even when we get to E3, depending on what they've got to say, there might not. This might have been the iceberg already. There might not be any saving it at this point.
If they're no clearer on all the things they've talked about this week in 2 more weeks, then absolutely that's going to be a big thing. The problem is, and just real quick, I think we ought to get, because this is going to be a big conversation, I think we ought to get into a few of the specifics, so like, for instance, I think that one of the first big ones is the used game sales issue. So what have they kind of come out and said, Daniel? Can you kind of start us off like with what was said initially, and then what sort of is, as of today when we're recording this, where are we at on it?
So the big initial thing was you will not be able to play used games on the Xbox 360. And then they're like,
pretty big deal.
That report started flying around. And then everyone's like, wait, what? Okay, and this was after the press conference. This was after our recording last week. Everyone's saying, well, you won't be able to play used games. And everyone's like, wait, hold the phone. What are you talking about? Then certain people say, well, you will be able to play used games. It'll just require a registration, or you'll have to because you have to install the games to the hard drive. Another thing, they did not talk about that during the press conference, and that is something I am not excited about at all.
No, and I think that they've, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that they were quoted somewhere, like maybe on Polygon, when asked specifically about that, they said that they were going to reveal more details about that later. So I think that's one of the things that they haven't confirmed or denied at this point.
Exactly. But what they're allowing to happen is letting all this speculation run rampant. But anyway, in terms of answering your question, Tony, what we've kind of arrived at as far as this recording goes is that when you buy a game, you own the game, and you could put it onto your Xbox One and play it to your heart's content. It is recognized that it belongs to that console, and people could play it in your house under your different user profiles and this, that, and the other thing. When you go to trade that game in, you're basically relinquishing your access to it, which means that when you go back home, the game on your hard drive is either no longer there or in a limited version, or I don't know. They have to describe what's going to happen with that in an effort that Microsoft can then basically say the game is almost new in a sense, and it has to be uploaded through this system that will be at retailer. Anybody who wants to do, what we're hearing is that, and this isn't confirmed, but this is what we're hearing as of now, that any retailer that wants to sell used games has to agree to this terms of service agreement with Microsoft in order to basically scan it in, have it be uploaded to the cloud with the information uploaded to the cloud, and then downloaded so that the game is basically reset, and then they could sell that back at a cost. But the retailer, GameStop, in this generation has reaped 100% of the profits on all used game sales, and we all know that that's been cannibalizing the industry. So this is Microsoft's way of dealing with it a little bit. It's not been
that's another debate.
Well, that's a different debate, but I mean, the reason why GameStop is so successful is because they have 100% profit margin on used games.
Right, but cannibalizing suggests that anyway,
that they're taking away from
a
sale that wouldn't have happened.
I don't want to get into that because that's not central to this conversation. But
it's central to Microsoft's decision to do something like this. If in fact they are doing
it's certain to their reasoning. I mean, it's central to their reasoning.
But the actual point in what we're talking about. So let's kind of move away from that. But really, that does sound pretty fucking complicated if that is what they're doing, and I do question a little bit how.
Well, and that also is one. Sorry to interject, but just that's one of the reasons people are saying that it needs to be constantly connected, is to be able to update and know what games are valid and what are not.
Okay, two things real fast. Number one, the other part of the other part of this system where like a used game retailer like GameStop basically has to like scan in that copy of the game, let Microsoft know that that specific copy, that unique copy, is now in their store, that it's going to be sold for retail, so Microsoft knows that it's no longer in, user Billy Blanks 15's, profile. That same system that makes sure that Microsoft gets a percentage of the of either and I'm not clear if it's the actual sale, when they sell it, or if it's just like there's like a fee that they're basically charging, like the retailer, like they're essentially charging them a registration fee, in order for them to like resell the game. But anyway, Microsoft
or maybe
gets
for
a
every
cut
time
of that.
they have to upload it to like have it sync, that's what they charge for. Is the
however
actual,
it is. But the point is that Microsoft gets a piece of that, and so does the publisher of that game.
Yeah.
And so that is obviously, this is what we're talking about. And again, bear in mind that this has not been officially confirmed by Microsoft. That is, kind of the solution, I suppose, that's being offered to the problem, in quotes, of used game sales. So here's I think is also something important to remember about this in relation to the always on connection. I think that Microsoft has addressed this a little bit, and they've kind of backed off of saying that it's got to be online all the time. They just said that it requires an internet connection, but the way that they're kind of describing it now makes it sound more like, well, the Xbox has got to check in like once every 24 hours or so, but if you lose connection, it's not going to limit your ability to play games or to watch live TV. And they have actually gone as far as saying that, functionality is built in to allow you to enjoy your games and enjoy your other entertainment when you don't have, like when you lose your internet connection.
Like
for a certain amount of time
to play that used game until it's connected again and could like validate it or something.
But a game
like
that you've already got installed,
exactly.
you could do
Something
that.
like
or at least for a certain amount of time until like there is a mandatory, okay, it's been 48 hours or something. Like, see, that's the thing.
Right.
They haven't given us any kind of details around that because, admittedly, I think everybody knows it's not going to be like, oh, you don't have an internet connection for 30 seconds, we're stopping your game. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not
because that would be ridiculous. But to be honest, that this whole sort of it checks in every 24 hours leads to that's a fairly current, fairly quick turnaround time. So I don't know, interesting. But let's move on to maybe the next.
I think that there's one other thing to say on this, though, okay? And that is the fact that we don't know for sure, but there are certainly rumors swirling that Sony is going to be doing something similar with the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe they were at one time thinking about it. And this is where it gets really, really interesting for me, because I think that the game publishing industry are the ones that are really, really wanting this whole Azure system that Microsoft's talking about implementing in order to make Xbox One titles essentially useless as far as retail resale goes, used game sales. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see if Sony, in fact, follows a similar track, because you got to admit, if you're Sony and you're looking at this situation, even if you've always been planning on doing something like this, you just didn't announce it, but this was going to be a part of the PlayStation 4, you have to admit that to those Sony executives who are looking at Microsoft trying to stay afloat this week with all of this negative press, I have to imagine that they are awfully tempted to go into E3 and to just press the accelerator and drive in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Now, if Sony goes into E3 and says, guess what? PlayStation 4, no restriction on used game sales at all.
Whatsoever,
I mean, the console war officially becomes a feeding frenzy at that point.
Yeah.
The question is whether or not like they can do that. I mean, like, there's a bunch of people who say, well, like, the video game publishers won't let them. But that creates a fascinating situation where it's like, well, if the video game publishers think that they're going to force Sony's hand, and like they're saying like we're not going to make games for your system if you don't do this, and then Sony says we're not going to do this used game thing. Used games are going to be unrestricted the same way they are right now. I think that's going to lead to Sony selling a lot more PlayStation 4s, and I think it's going to turn people off the Xbox
have
One.
To start developing
That's exactly
games for that.
right.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a really, really interesting kind of power struggle if that happens.
Well, and I just want to say on that front real fast, and we should probably do a whole conversation on used games, but I think for the end user, if they handle this right, we always talk about like how you approach consumers. I think at the end of the day, consumers like me, I don't care about. it's kind of difficult to explain. I think when you're buying something physical, you own it and you want to be able to do what you want to it. So if I want to give the game to you, Brent, even if that means I have to like give you my code for it or something like that, I should be able to do that. Like you should be able to just have something that I bought it, I paid for it. That's all I need.
How does Brent get his Azure upload system to work to let him know that you gave him the game?
If he used I'm not solving the problem. I'm just giving an example of what me as a consumer might want. That if I buy a copy of the next game, whatever, Red Dead Redemption 2, and then I want to give it to Brent after I've beaten it, I should be able to do that. Whatever the logistics are, that's fine. When I go to trade it in, people trade it in so that they could get games cheaper. That should remain intact.
That's not really a good argument because they buy them from GameStop.
Well, but
what I'm saying is who that money goes to. If the process is the same, I bring a used game in, I get XYZ, I get credit or cash, and I buy XYZ. If that process is the same, but it's Microsoft and the game developer getting money instead of GameStop, that's what they should do. They should just make that process exactly the same somehow. But it's
I think you bring up a good issue, though. I'm not sure you can give someone else a game. Like, if the system, the way it sort of sounds like, I don't think, because there is not a way for you to sort of, and granted, speculation crazy, because we don't have any fucking details, because frankly, Microsoft's done a shitty job of doing this. Yeah. But I don't know if there is a way. Like, it sounds like, because they see that as, well, your buddy over here that you're just giving the game to, we should get a cut of what he should be paying for that game.
Oh, no, that would be BS.
Well, but how else do you get it activated through the cloud or whatever?
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems to me that, like, the friends you're going to, like, give your game to, they're going to have to go through this Azure, registration system the same way that GameStop would, and as opposed to GameStop paying them, X amount of money to register, the new copy of the game, that, like, your friend's going to have to do it. But, the real thing about that is...
That's hardcore.
It is hardcore, but the real strategy in this is to kill off GameStop, and they are in effect going to be able to do that because whatever this registration fee is going to mean that paying for a used copy of a game is going to be as, if not more expensive than a new copy of the game. Therefore, nobody's going to buy used games, and that's exactly what the industry is pushing for.
Or GameStop gets less profit off of it, and then hopefully just drives down their importance in the industry.
I think that depending on what the fee is, let's just say that let's say your average used game sells for, I don't know, $53 as opposed to $60, right? Let's say that this registration fee is $7. So basically, nobody's going to buy a used game, for the exact same price as a new game. They're going to buy a new game. So, in that situation, GameStop is like, if GameStop's got the choice to either lower their profits, take less money in order to keep people buying used games, or to just stop selling used games. So in that case, I think GameStop, would...
The profit margins just go way down.
Yeah, I think that they would lower their cost, lower their profits in order to continue to sell used games.
Sure.
But the thing about that is, if selling used games is in fact, if it's the huge problem that the industry claims it is, then I don't really understand how that solves it. Is the $7, that Microsoft and the publishers are going to be splitting, is that really going to be the difference between whether the game industry lives or dies, as they often kind of claim that it is?
It certainly won't solve it if all that happens is GameStop makes less money.
Yeah.
If that's all that happens from this, then...
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing about this is that I don't, if the problem is what they say it is, and if it is as dire as what they say it is, then I'm not sure that this is a solution. Which makes me question whether or not it is the problem they say it is, and if it's as dire as they say it is. So I don't know. Like I'm very skeptical about kind of the industry's motives in this, and I'm equally as skeptical as to. I'm skeptical on Microsoft's sanity if they honestly think that they still have the if they still have the wherewithal to make this work, to make it work reliably, and to basically force the retail industry into towing the line. I really question if they're going to be able to do this.
Well, and also I kind of start to wonder how big a problem is this a few years from now. Like right now, it's still pretty in the hearts and minds of people. But let's be honest, I think they're definitely going towards more of a digital download focused and maybe there's a new sort of like, hey, I can down the road, my digital download copies, I can release them back into the system for like a certain amount of money back credit in Microsoft points or something. Well, not Microsoft points, but but like, say I bought a game for $50, brand new release title for $50 or $60, and a month later I want to, release that digital copy so I can no longer play it. They give me $15 credit, which, let's be honest, is way more than you usually get for a lot of games after even a month or so from even GameStop. And then you can use that credit to maybe buy something else. Like I could see them working around ways which basically let them control all aspects of it. That may almost make this a moot point a few years down the road.
Right.
But it's definitely a hot point. I still maintain that this is basically Microsoft is basically just trying to see what they can get away with. And I don't even necessarily mean in like a nefarious way, exactly like, let's just see what we can do.
They're just kind of testing the waters. They want to see.
I think
let's let this leak and then kind of see what the reaction is.
Let's see what it is. And the reaction was hugely negative, and I think they kind of pulled back and they were like, okay, well, wait a minute. What if we did this? Well, that wouldn't be much better, but it's kind of okay. Well, what if we did this? Like, I think it's almost like they're just trying to. I don't think they know. I mean, I think they know exactly what they would like to do, which I think they would like to just say no used game sales. But I think they're trying to test the water to see where is that sweet spot of what are people willing to put up with and do, and I think that means the end user as well as like the publishers and the resellers, things like that. What is everybody kind of willing? What's that sweet spot to where we can get some of that profit? Which again, I think I think Brent may be slightly on the same page. I'm not even 100% sure that they're completely entitled to. Like, the whole thing is both sides of this, the used game market and the game market, are making huge profits, bigger profits than they've made in years. And, it's kind of, it's sort of like, is this a problem? Why is this affecting the end user, basically? Like, the end user doesn't care. They're like, look, just make it so I can do it and it's not a pain in the ass. Let's move on to like another one of, and I actually think this is another one of the more interesting things. A lot of people are really worried about the sort of privacy angle on the Xbox One. It's always on, constant, internet connection. Well, not constant, but constantly at least able to get online. And you've got basically a high-resolution camera that can understand voice commands and talk back to you and do all kinds of
Recognize
stuff.
faces.
That's pointed right in the thing we call the living room, because that's where we live our lives. How big of a deal do we think this might kind of be?
I think it's a big deal.
I do too, especially for people of a certain age. I think that like the younger you go, probably the less people are worried about this. But I think that for people of a certain age and older, I mean, that would be a deal breaker for them.
Yeah. To be honest, last week, again, to reiterate for all the people in the comments talking about my reaction last week, I was talking about their presentation of the entertainment portion. A lot of this stuff they did not talk about. What they talked about was, is Skype cool? Yes, I'd love to call my brother on the living room phone. When I activate it, I would like to interact with fantasy sports and do other kind of stuff. So sure, great. I'm expecting great games. These are add-ons, and you did what you needed to do to get on the USA Today. We're done. But the more that's come out, I am not interested in having an always-on high-definition camera in my living room with my 3 children and my wife running around.
With a microphone.
With a microphone, so that when I say Xbox on it, the convenience factor of being able to say Xbox on and have the thing come on is nowhere near worth the cost of knowing that it's constantly on.
No, you're right.
Everybody
I would feel weird being in my own living room.
Yeah. And what about the thing that we've read where like at some point they're talking about how the Kinect is going to become like Siri on Apple's iOS devices, and that it's actually going to talk back to you. It'll have the synthesized voice. It'll interact with you, ask you questions, tell you things, that sort of stuff. And there's this thing that the people are talking about, like when Kinect recognizes a new person that comes into your living room, like your friend comes over, it says, oh, hello, new person, what's your name? And it like catalogs them, adds them to its database, stores their picture, and I'm just like, that sounds like an awful idea.
Yeah, no, it's and the technology really is there. Like, I think if things like this, if we were afraid things like this were happening, say the last console generation, the technology I don't really think was there to make good on these sorts of scary ideas that people had about it. Right now, it absolutely is. Like, the technology is there that they basically all the things people are worried about. Now, I mean, we have Microsoft's, we have them basically saying like we would never. I mean, they're always going to say we would never use this data for anything other than just to make your experience better. But I'll be honest with you, the government has said that to me for years, and they aren't doing a very good job of that either. So I'm sure everybody has the best intentions.
Just because they don't have bad intentions with it, hackers do. Sony didn't have bad intentions with their credit cards, but it got hacked and they got access. So if my pictures of me and my wife and my kids and everything I do in a living room is somewhere on a database,
and you do some freaky shit in the living room. I'm just putting that out there.
No, thank you. I am not signing up for that.
No, I agree. I mean, I think
what happens if you bring home a PlayStation 4 and you've already got an Xbox One hooked up?
I do not.
He's like, what are you doing, Daniel? Who is that?
Like, basically what happens is if it, like, with the Kinect camera recognizes a PlayStation 4 logo, like, anywhere in your living room, it goes, like, all Ed 209 on you and says, like, you got to toss it out the window or it deletes your game library. You have 15 seconds to comply.
No, it just sends all the records of everything you've done to the, to the government and has you arrested,
Isn't the simplest solution here just to have the damn thing turn on when you power it on?
Well, see, that's the whole thing. Like, everybody talked, and that was one thing that, everybody was like, oh, don't you love the idea of just being able to wave your hand and talk to it and do all sorts of stuff? I was like, no, I like fucking buttons. I like to hit a button to turn it on and to like click on a button to start playing a game. And I don't really see how saying something or waving my arms like a fucking idiot is better than just clicking a button on a lot of things. I'm not saying that there's not some benefit to it, but I also don't think that it's just like where everything needs to go. There has to be kind of an in-between.
Well, the thing about this, and this is a bit more on the technical side, but the thing about this is that presumably most of like the voice recognition stuff or like facial recognition stuff, I'm assuming, I don't know this for certain, but I'm presuming that all that's happening in the cloud, much the way that Apple Siri works. Basically, like you say something, it records that voice sample, it uploads it real quick, it translates it, figures out what you're asking, sends a command back down to the console to do whatever it is that you're asking. And this process is very quick. It happens pretty seamlessly for the most part. But the simple fact of the matter is that it is sending data into the cloud with voice recognition or facial recognition in order to accomplish this task, which means that if somebody is listening in on your Wi-Fi network, if somebody hacks your home network, then they've got access to a lot of information that they could use.
Yeah, I don't need anybody knowing that I'm searching for wet panties on Google. I don't need that out
Siri,
there.
You got to press a button too and like make it happen. But you're totally right.
That's right.
We are entering with this console generation. We're definitively crossing that line where we have to get really serious about security and the things that we put out there. Just because.
That's right. And has Microsoft demonstrated that they are security conscious enough to get people to trust them with that level of access?
The bottom line is, like I said last week, they talked about the idea of using Kinect, and I'm never into hand gestures. I've always said that. But again, this whole thing that the thing is on all the time, deal breaker. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Well, now they have said, there was a report, I think literally this morning, that said that there is an off button. There is a way to turn it off, all the way off. And I think that is in, it's basically...
Does it involve opening the pod bay doors?
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, how difficult is that? And will Xbox One disagree with you if you try to do it? It'll be like, no, I don't think we should be turned off right now.
Right.
Like, I mean, but there is supposedly... but I think that speaks to the fact that Microsoft has to come out and say, okay, look. There is a power off button. That means that they really aren't doing a good job of getting kind of, I think, a point across.
This all comes back to the messaging. This all comes back to the fact that they had the attention of the entire world for a little over an hour. And they could have, they could have addressed all this. They could have just put the information out there and settled all of this before it even started. But in the absence of information, speculation will reign. And Microsoft, unfortunately, opened the door for that by not providing the information.
And again, I question that they did the exact wrong thing. The group of people that would be the most intimidated by all these things that have kind of come out are the people that they were supposedly selling to that when they announced this. I would be interested, Daniel, did you read the USA Today article that was written about it? Like, was it actually about just how awesome a in-home thing, or was it about or was it about the sort of questionability of how good that press conference was? And like what the information they got out.
It was an article that touched on bullet points, the exact bullet points Microsoft wanted to communicate for a USA Today audience, which is exactly what the fuck I said last week. The article was, if you took keywords from the article, it was Xbox One, Kinect, NFL agreement, Call of Duty. That's it. Those are the bullet points. And
there was no question there. What about there are some questions about There was no statements like that at all.
Well, they said they'll be showing more games at E3. They might have maybe hinted at we're still waiting for some answers on this.
The controversy over all this stuff.
Games, they don't mention
the controversy over all that stuff didn't really happen until like after that article would have been written.
Anyway,
exactly.
Yeah, but my whole point though is I still and I think I've proven right that they aimed it at the wrong audience. They made a miscalculation this time around. They should have aimed it at the right, at the gamers this time around and done all this stuff a year or two later when they fixed all these problems, or at least had an idea what they're doing about all these issues.
This could have been what this would have been good for was like CES. This would have been a good CES. Sure. Like, hey, this is what we're doing next. We'll answer all your questions about the games at E3, but like, here's our cool, fancy like way to snap and do stuff.
I'll even give you that it would have been good the day before E3. Like, if they had shown this the day before E3, where you didn't have 2-3 weeks for people to flip the fuck out about what they're talking about. I think that it could have come off a little better. Basically, people have been like, oh, wait a minute. Well, we'll wait till tomorrow to find out, and they wouldn't have lost their minds. But now they gave it just enough time for everybody to, because let's be honest, they have not handled it well, because they didn't give us answers, it's because they gave us answers and then changed them and came back and let it kind of but through their different people have given
McLaughlin Group style question. Okay, is the situation that Microsoft currently finds themselves in is this a scenario entirely of their own devising, or did Sony, with their press conference and the timing and everything, maneuver Microsoft into this position?
It's all their fault.
Absolutely the latter. Absolutely the latter.
No, it's the first one. Absolutely. They had absolute control. They had plenty of time to put together their message on it.
I know, but what I'm saying, they forced their hand to have a meeting.
No, they didn't.
And then
they didn't have to have a meeting. They may have influenced them, but they didn't force them.
Well, they didn't, of course they didn't force it.
But influencing is very different. Like, for that, basically, Microsoft tried to call Sony's bluff and called it poorly, basically. Yeah, like, they didn't have to do it. They could have sat back and said, you know what, hey, our E3 showing is good enough. People didn't know about this until like a little while later. They didn't even have to announce it. Just we're not even going to have anything until E3. You see everything at E3.
Sure, they could have done that. But what I'm saying is the only reason they had this meeting was in response to Sony's meeting.
But that's their decision. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
It's all their fault.
That was their decision.
Yeah, it's all on them.
And I get where you're both kind of, in a way, you're both almost kind of saying the same thing. I mean, Microsoft had the free will to choose, but Microsoft chose what they chose to do in response to what Sony did.
Exactly. If Sony never had a meeting, they wouldn't have chosen to have their own meeting by themselves.
I know, but they still had total control over not doing it, and they should have.
There's another point here that I was thinking about. Dan, you were talking about last week about the USA Today article and the picture on the cover and everything, and that's true. Microsoft does have their picture on, like they do have the Xbox One on USA Today this week, but Sony, who has not revealed the design or price of the PlayStation 4, how likely are they to have the PlayStation 4 on the cover of USA Today the week of E3?
Because we've already seen it. That's a very good point.
Yep.
So
and they probably will.
I gotta say that the more that we kind of watch this going on, the more I am beginning to kind of sense that a lot of this is just like really kind of like hardcore businesses war kind of shit coming from Sony.
Yeah. Well, look, here's the deal. Sony's going into E3 as they handled their thing better because in terms of that, Microsoft definitely look, the people that read the USA Today and that audience that I spoke about last week, they don't give a shit. They don't know what's going on, and then they'll hear at E3 about the games, and for them, we'll get to November and everything will be hunky dory or whatever.
But they won't. They're not the people that will be looking into E3. Do you think?
Well, no, but they'll hear about it in USA again then.
Right. I know. Like they're just going to get like those sorts of like really vanilla pieces of information.
Yeah. But they're not the people they're going to be buying this year anyway. I still maintain. But I get what you're saying. Sure. I think Sony is.
But they really have to do a good job. Microsoft does at E3.
Oh God, they have to pull off the best E3 they've ever had.
Totally.
So I think Sony is kind of coming into this, as the underdog, just in terms of the last console generation. Even though I think numbers have come up to pretty much parity or close to it.
But they've positioned themselves very well so far.
Well, absolutely. They've made some very good decisions. And again, I guess it just depends on how you look at it. I do see what you're saying, Daniel, but I totally think that Microsoft was still in the power. They were still in the power position. And basically, they were too over. They reminded me, and I said this to Brent on a conversation we had, I think, after last week, that they reminded me almost exactly of Sony last generation. They're coming off of a huge win with their previous console, being a little cocky, thinking that, hey, you know what, we've already got this locked up. Let's move on to the other crowd, because the other one's just going to follow us. And basically, I think that they really need to. Honestly, what they need to do is they need to stop. They need to go on media blackout for like the next week, and they need to focus on making sure the E3 is absolutely perfect. That's the only way that I think they can come out of this.
And then they need to give the console away.
I mean, some would argue they might be doing that anyway with
even if they did
announced.
that at this point. I don't know. I mean, like, I still wouldn't take one.
Well, not with an always on camera. I sure.
No.
We'll see. It's going to be a very interesting E3. That's for sure.
All right, guys. Well, we are coming up near the end of this week's Skirmish, but first, we have our Battle Cries of the week, and I'm going to start off with my Battle Cry, which actually goes, we've talked the last couple weeks about a couple of pretty cool limited or special edition games that are coming out, and to be honest with you, most of them have kind of just been interesting. Like, nothing I would actually bother to spend the money on, but, kind of like, that's pretty cool. I could see if you're a fan, kind of a neat game. This is one I legitimately might see if I can pick up through an importer or something. The Dungeons and Dragons collection that is coming out later this year for Xbox 360, PS3. I believe it's only 2 consoles. That has the old school Dungeons and Dragons side-scrolling arcade games from Capcom. Is getting a limited edition that is actually really cool. It comes with 2 CD soundtrack, one for the music from each game. It comes with the I can't remember what they call them, but they're like the gamist books. They're like the things that just kind of have some nice artwork and background information stuff on each title. It's come out with 2 of those. It's coming out with just a lot of material that's coming together. And from what I understand, I think the price point's not going to be terribly expensive. I think it's going to be maybe in the $99 range. So about $30 or $40 more than the regular edition, but really, really cool if you're a fan of the series, and which I am. And I think it's a very cool thing too for a game that doesn't really have a huge audience, but the audience that's really into it, I think would really appreciate this. So, it's one of those things. I think Capcom used to do this back. I remember in the Saturn days, I used to get the ones that had the really cool book that would come with it. It had cool artwork, had the Cyberbots one and stuff, and just really, really awesome artwork and things that came with it. And it looks like they might be kind of getting back to doing some more things like that. So I'm all for that.